Hello and welcome to our May episode of Women's Public Leadership Network's podcast series, Tips from the Trail, where we explore the path to political office from the decision to run to Election Day. This program features women leaders who are working in or around politics or have run for office, sharing their best tips and tricks for success. I'm your host, Larissa Martinez, founder and president of WPLN, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to educate, organize, and inspire center-right women to seek public office at every level across the U.S. Joining us today is Jen Nassour, a trailblazer for conservative women in Massachusetts and beyond. She is the co-founder of the Pocketbook Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to electing more women in Massachusetts and the Northeast, and former CEO of Reflect Us, a nonpartisan coalition of the nation's leading women's representation organizations. Most recently, she was the Northeast chair of the Women for Nikki Coalition for the Nikki Haley for President campaign, and she's currently the finance chair of the Mass GOP, as well as the host of Political Contessa. Jen, we're so excited to have you join us today for our Tips from the Trail podcast. For those listening, we are joined by Jennifer Nassour, who is the host of Political Contessa. She is also the finance chair of the Mass GOP, a political strategist, political analyst. She's a commentator on the news, and she also was a candidate herself in 2019 for Boston City Council. So, Jen, we're so excited to have you join us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. This is so fun being on someone else's podcast for once.
I know.
It's a lot less stressful, by the way.
I think it's so fun to have you here because we're just talking about how we've known each other for a very long time-ish, it seems. But in that time, you've done so many things. You've had so many different roles and worn a ton of different hats in the political space. And so I'm so thrilled that you're able to join us for our May podcast. But we're also going to be talking about your role as a mom in the space as well, which I think is so tremendous, especially because you're the mother of 3 beautiful daughters.
Well, thank you. I do think that they are pretty amazing inside and out. And as they've gotten older, it's amazing. It's different. I always admire the moms that are running for office or hold elected office because it's challenging just being a parent in itself. And then I'm also divorced. And so I've been on my own for 10 years. And so I run a sorority house on top of my career and the kids, and 2 of them are in college now, and it doesn't get easier. It's actually like they go to school far away. So it's actually work when I want to go see them, I have to leave my life, like literally leave to go visit. So working moms out there, especially women in politics, damn, not easy.
No, a lot of balancing,
Yes.
which we will definitely get into during a conversation. But I want to start off first with when you were a candidate, just because I think it's so interesting how you chose to run for city council and then, how you prepared your family for that run. So if we could start there and then kind of work in some of your additional experience, I think that would be great.
Yeah. So, I've been active in politics for about 30 years now. So it wasn't like, I always marvel, and this is like not offensive to any of the guys listening, but like men, it's amazing. They wake up in the morning, wash their face, putting on whatever they put on their face, and they're like, hey, I look good. I'm going to run for office. And not only am I going to run for office, I'm going to run for U.S. Senate today. And that's amazing. I was, growing up in a very, in a political machine, last political machine in the country in Nassau County, New York. And it was, you start somewhere and you land up somewhere and you wait until people are moving over and, you learn the ropes and you spend time in your town committee and you spend time with the county committee and you put in your time working in public office and, different places. And so it was for me, when I decided to run for city council, I had so many people say to me, why don't you run for Congress instead? Like, I don't want to run for Congress, right? Like, I'm going to be one of those bozos. I'd rather be one of the bozos on the city council where I'm actually doing something in my backyard. And that was the thing that was most important to me, was being able to effectuate a change for my family, for my neighbors, for my friends, our community. And I live in Boston, and so rats are a real issue. And it was really funny when I came out at first and I said my big issue is rats. Well, the issue is rats, but where did the rats come from? It has to do with garbage pickup. It has to do with sanitation, and then it goes into public health, right? So you don't want rats running around because they're feces and they're dirty and ugh, and who wants a rat?
Thank you.
So it was rats, it was homelessness. Boston has been in the news for years because we have an area, Mass and Cass, which they've cleaned up. They've just really moved them to a different part of the city, but it's like methadone mile. And so you have addicts that have not been properly taken care of. We used to have a location in Boston to take care of them. That had closed down. It was called Long Island. They closed the bridge to Long Island. And so now all these homeless drug addicts are all over the place. Well, what do? They're looking for food. Where do they go? They go in your trash. What happens when they expose the trash? More rats, right? So it was like, it was really systemic. And so for me, that was important. It was important watching my youngest scooter to school and there'd be missing bricks in the sidewalk or dips in and holes and the trees popping the sidewalks up. And I just said, this is important to me, right? I want to get bogged down in the local stuff. And I think that's really important to recognize why you're running for office. Are you running for office because it's your ego? Are you running for office because it's your calling? Are you running for office because something traumatic happened in your life and you feel like, what's her name? Carolyn McCarthy on Long Island. I was right out of college when her husband was shot on the Long Island Railroad, and then she ran for Congress. An example like that, right, is something where something traumatic happened. Is it that you just feel really passionately about your community? And I think that those are all things you have to explore before you run for office.
Yeah. Well, and we talk a lot about your why, which you're someone who has trained on that a lot in her life and talked to others about getting really clear about your why. And I think it's something that I talk about to any person, any candidate I meet, because the amount of people, especially those running for Congress, as you mentioned, when you ask them, okay, but why are you doing this? It's amazing how many do not have answers or do not have answers that make a lot of sense for why they're running for that position. So I think to your point, it's so important to get very clear on your purpose, your why, and then pick the appropriate position that makes sense with your why. And I think after you made this decision, tell me a little bit about how then you brought it up to your kids because it's very different being behind the scenes for 30 years and kind of having that, where people are calling you in the middle of the night or you're watching, returns, you're making, you're advising on candidate campaigns, you're making analysis on national television and public radio. But what do you do when it's actually you that wants to be the candidate when it comes to making sure that your family feels prepared?
Well, I had to have a series of conversations because I also wanted to talk to my ex-husband and tell him, hey, I'm going to do this just so you know, like this exposes the entire family, right? It's we share kids together. And so if this impacts them anyway, is this going to impact you anyway? And so I wanted to talk to him. I sat my kids down. At the time they were, they were 16, 13, and 7. And so they were, teenagers that were not driving yet, but they could stay by themselves. But then I also had a little one that I would worry about. And so I sat them down and I explained what I was going to do. I explained why I was going to do it, why it was important to me, and how they could be involved in it and how I wanted them to be involved in it. So that way we could spend time together, but also they could see. I also thought it was really important for them to understand exactly what I was doing because, the world is cruel. And even though I was running for city council and it's a nonpartisan election, I knew that it was just because of who I am. I knew it was going to become partisan. I also knew at the time Donald Trump was president in his first term. It was 2019. And Boston, they hated the guy. And I knew that it was like all the sins that they felt that Donald Trump had committed were going to be put on me, even though at the time we also had the most popular governor in the country in Charlie Baker. And so I wanted them to know that they might face some pushback at school or with friends or anything else. So we kept open dialogue and I got them involved in my campaign. And I also wanted their friends involved and I wanted their friends' parents to be involved. And so it was good to have that conversation with them.
So when you say involved, what did that entail? What type of activities did they tend to participate in or like to participate in?
Yeah, I mean, so my youngest, Gemma, came with me door knocking all the time. And she was so cute. She had on her little unicorn helmet and she was on her scooter and she was wearing these bright yellow Jennifer Nassour for city council t-shirts. And I had kid sizes made. And she would ride around in her little scooter with this bright t-shirt on and walk up to doors with me. And there was one day, it must have been July. It was so crazy, crazy hot. And like Boston hot is just steamy hot. And it must have been 90 degrees. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was really hot. The kid she was literally melting. I knock on a door. The husband I knew would be a likely voter for me. The wife answers. She is not a likely voter for me. This lovely, lovely woman grilled me to no end, but it was a great conversation, and she appreciated that I stood there with her for like an hour.
Wow.
I stood outside.
Wow.
And poor little Gemma was like literally, she was like the snowman in Frozen, literally just melting.
Oh.
And I looked at her and she goes, "Can we please go get ice cream?"
Oh.
And finally the woman looked and goes, "Okay, you should probably go get her ice cream." I was like, so, but she had fun doing it. She was always willing to go up to people, especially people who had dogs, and go pet the dogs. So she was a really good mascot for me because she wore that t-shirt everywhere and she was so happy and little, and it was fun. The older girls rallied their friends. They would go door knocking or they would go lit dropping. They didn't really door knock, but they did a lot of lit dropping for me. And they would wear their t-shirts around and they would hand out pencils and stuff like that. And so that was all part of, I think, for them to get to see what a campaign was like from the ground up, right? Mm-hmm. And they came to debates. They came to different events, fundraisers that I had. And so they really got to see me up speaking, which, as a mom, and especially in my world, as you know, Larissa, like I've been incredibly fortunate to have worked for organizations where I could be remote. I was remote before anyone was remote, right? I mean, and so I will be at home and working, and I always call it like the modern day mullet, right? Dressed from here up and then not from the waist down. Not that I'm not dressed, but like, I look a little different in the waist down. And so my kids would come home from school or come home from activities and look at me and be like, thinking literally I must have been sitting around eating bonbons all day, like watching soap operas. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's like your path, but I'd be working all day and they wouldn't have any idea. So it was great to have them with me because they got to see, oh, Mom actually really does do something.
Yeah. Did you ever see or hear from them when it came to like negative experiences? Did they share anything with you that stands out, that feels like something that you were able to, take in stride or use it as a lesson learned, something that could be helpful? Because I'm sure, especially with social media and the ages that your daughters were during this time, that there could have been some really ugly stuff that happened.
Yeah. I mean, at the time they were only on, like Snapchat, maybe. There wasn't a lot out there, like Instagram, and maybe it was Snapchat, and that was it. There wasn't TikTok at the time that I remember. And if it was there, I don't think that they were on it.
So would it have been like school stuff or like?
And school stuff, they have always been in Christian school. And so my youngest, and they teach tolerance and they teach respect. And so my younger one was in a Christian school, elementary school. The older two were in Christian Catholic high school, and so middle school, high school. And so I feel like no one would have been openly mean or nasty. And the only thing they did experience it on the campaign trail more than with their friends. And like my youngest, when Gemma went out, we were getting signatures, and she was walking around with, I don't know, my campaign manager or someone else. And I said, "You go because you're so cute. Who's going to say no to you?" Right. So again, like little unicorn helmet and little scooter. And she had like my bumper stickers on her scooter. And like it was all tricked out with like everything was me. And went and asked someone if they would sign a petition to get me on the ballot. And the person was like, "No."
Wow.
And she comes back, looks at me and goes, "Mommy, someone said no to me. I'm a kid. Who says no to a kid?" And since that, I was on the cover of the Metro cover of the Boston Globe. When people actually read like actual physical papers, and it was me and my opponent after the preliminary, and they pointed out Republican, Democrat, first time in 40 years, how's this going to go? And so, I think that was a little uncomfortable for them, but I do so much TV and radio. And so all of their friends and their friends' families know that I have a voice in this world. So I think it was probably less for them than it is for me. I also taught my kids from a very young age, do not Google me, because this crap that's out there is unbelievable. And I just don't want you reading stuff, especially when they were really young. Now they're older, I don't care.
You're like, lessons learned. Lessons learned.
Yeah.
It's how you build thick skin, which is what you need.
Exactly. In business, you need it.
Especially being a woman. So do you feel that the campaign experience strengthened your bond with your daughters, or is it because you noted that you've already kind of been in this world, that it was pretty much just like, here's another facet of this experience?
So, I think it did, because they really missed me.
Oh.
And they had said at the end, they were like, "Please don't do that again while we're still."
Oh my God.
If you're going to do this again, do it when we're in college. Like, yeah. I think really I don't think that they realized, again, like, even though I'm in this crazy world of politics where so many nights I have to be out and go to events and the rubber chicken dinners and the fundraisers and all that stuff, I'm home a lot. And because we were living in the city, and I could be at home until the very last minute, and I could be home as soon as an event was over. But when I was campaigning, you can't run out of a room. You right. Go to a debate, and it's a 3-hour debate, and then you're staying there talking to people after. And I think that they just kind of missed having me around, especially at those teenage years.
Yeah. So then what do you think was the role that your support network played in ensuring that you were able to balance and juggle having 3 kids, even if they were fairly self-sufficient? It still required a lot of organization and help. So I'm curious, yeah. and how you also prepared them for this.
Yeah. I mean, so interestingly, I grew up in New York. My entire family is in New York. My mother lives in Florida. My brother died 25 years ago. My dad died 43 years ago. I mean, like, I didn't have family. And the only family I had in Massachusetts was my cousin's daughter. I like calling her my cousin because she's so young. She makes me feel younger. But she was in Boston and working, and she ended up spending a lot of time with us and working on the campaign and helping with me, helping me, not just on the campaign, but also if I had something late, she would not be with us on the campaign trail. She would be at my house. I also had a phenomenal babysitter. We just like put her life aside while I was doing that. and spent a lot of time with the kids in the house, and just having the two of them kind of rotate through was gigantic. Also friends that were super supportive. I mean, that in the community who I didn't know were going to show up in the way that they showed up, but were wearing my t-shirts, and they were serving pancakes at like the local street fair with my t-shirt on, and their kids were wearing the t-shirt, and every like sea of yellow everywhere. And kids at school writing with the pencils that my kids had given out at school. So that was gigantic. Like just having that emotional support from my sitter and my cousin, but then also on the outside, seeing happy faces and my friends look at me and give me a hug and, high five, like keep going.
Yeah. And I think so many people forget how important that is, those little moments, and like to have that continuation. And speaking of which, I think it's so important for your daughters, but also candidates in general, when they're looking at people like yourself that have already gone through the process, have done this before, seeing how you care for yourself and your well-being while you're on the trail. And obviously those little moments are great to have every now and then, but was there anything that you kind of incorporated into your campaign or your daily life that like helped maintain the sanity, help maintain the like positivity? Because there's always the dark days. That's what I call them, the dark days. Like there's always those times where it's like really tough, or your family's like not happy or whatever it may be. So I'm curious kind of how you managed those pieces and tried to take care of yourself so that you were also showing up for them too.
So that's such a great question, because the only thing I could relate it to is anyone who has had a baby in the last 4 years will probably know this. Like they tell you, don't start anything new that you haven't done before when you're pregnant, but if you've been doing it, keep doing it, right? And so I have always worked out. The way I deal with my stress from when I was a little kid, when my dad died, was working out. And so I used to do like, I mean, you're younger than me. I don't know if you remember this, but like Jane Fonda workouts,
Yes.
right? Which was like the original Pilates. And I would sit there and do like, start with the 30 and then go to the 60 and then do the 90. And I danced and I played soccer. And so I always managed which I didn't realize until I got older, that I needed to work out in order to like keep myself level. I'm also a Libra. And so like God, scales, when they go over, and I'm Sicilian and Syrian, like do not let the scales get off balance. Like balance, Jen, it means everyone is happy. And so I boxed, I weight trained, and I ran. And before I campaigned, and I kept that during the campaign as well. So like in my schedule, the same time of day that I've always worked out, I kept in my schedule and said, do not bug me. Like, unless it's something super, super important at this time, I have to keep doing all the things that I do, because that was the only thing that could keep me on track and keep me balanced and happy and sane.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that that's such a great piece of advice for everyone, whatever that thing is. And you can do that. I think, I'm certainly guilty of this, where the only thing that is really flexible in your life and within your control is the stuff that you have on your schedule for you, right? That's like whether it be working out, whether it be a certain time you get up in the morning, whatever it may be, like that's the flex places in your schedule. So it is really easy to ignore those, or to move them around, or cancel them, or do whatever needs to happen in order to make the other things happen, or to troubleshoot. But I think, to your point, making it really clear, like one of your boundaries, for lack of a better term, is to not go over certain personal things, because that impacts you, and you are the principal. I mean, you're the brand, you're the candidate. You have to be able to be there and show up and do what you need to do. So I love that. That's something I need to remind myself as well. I don't know how I would put that on a Post-it, like on my mirror, but I should probably do that. Like something like, do not cancel yourself today. Like something like that, right?
That's exactly it. Because look, for me, it is, everyone has their own thing, right? So like for me, if I have an extra hour in my day, I will go work out. I will go take a walk. I will go do weights, I'll go row, I'll go do something. That's what I like to do, and that's what makes me feel good. But if your thing is like needlepoint and you're running for office, take your time and needlepoint. I have a friend who just wrote a book, and she said from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. every day, she gets up and she writes. Wow. If journaling is your thing, carve out that time to do it for yourself, right? And I think all of us, especially as women, we get in our heads like, I have to do X, Y, and Z. No, pick out, if you're running for office, pick the one thing you love other than that's for you. You need a facial, that's your thing. You need a massage, you get a manicure, like sit there and find the place that they're rubbing your shoulders as you're getting a manicure. Like, but carve out that time for yourself, because whether it's 6 months or 16 months that you're running, it is really a long period of time. And it's a lot to let yourself go and not do the thing that you really enjoy doing for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. So I have a couple of additional questions, but they're going to be kind of rapid fire. So the first is, we have just launched a new program with WPLN. I don't know if you know, but it's called Lead in Style. And we just hosted our first one in Montana earlier this month. And this is where we are trying to address the professional confidence gap and making sure that women feel like they are know how to elevate themselves, whether that be from a clothing perspective, makeup, hair, all of the usual things. But one of the things that we like to ask, and we make sure that we provide kind of a tips at that program, is what's in your bag. So what's in your bag, Jen, right now that is super helpful, that you feel like you always have to have, no matter what, when it comes to feeling and looking your best and feeling prepared?
Ooh, okay. So I always have, and sorry, I have 2 dogs, and so sometimes they make appearances on shows. So my little trick that I always have with me is Aquaphor. I always have a little tiny size ones of Aquaphor in my car, in my purse, when I travel, it does a number of things. One, like, it takes away makeup smears. It is an instant lip gloss. It is like instantly can brighten your cheeks. If you have flyaway hairs, you take a little and it's instant oil. Wow. If you have skin, it helps that. It's like I use it literally for everything. So I swear by Aquaphor, that's always with me. The other thing that I always have in my bag is some sort of lip gloss or lipstick. And that's pretty much it. Like I am not a person who uses a lot of makeup. But there's also like another little trick that I found too. I have this little Merit, see, I don't even know what the heck it's called. Blush. Oh, blush. And it's a little tiny round thing. Also great to throw in my bag, so that way, like, instantly look flushed and not look like I'm dead. So, especially with the weather that I have here all the time.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. Super helpful. And I did not know that trick about Aquaphor. I feel like I now need that in my life. So thank you. And then what would be kind of your last piece of advice to any mom out there that is looking to either jump in and hold office or start to move towards public leadership in some capacity?
I think it's do it because it makes you happy. Do it because it's something that is going to benefit your kids. It's going to be rewarding. It's going to be something that I always say to people, what do you want written on your tombstone? Right? It's kind of morbid, but at the end of the day, it's what do you want your legacy to be? Yeah. Right. And so you should live your life, especially in politics, as what you want your legacy to be, because I think it keeps you honest and it keeps you on your mission. And so what is that mission? And so that's kind of what I would say is I think it's just really important whether you're a mom or you're not. But, for me, I created 3 other human beings. And those human beings, they're like gremlins. They girls multiply like no one's business, not with babies. I'm not a grandmother yet for a long time, but like with their friends. Mm-hmm. And so, how could you be a role model to the next generation? Because even if you stop at school committee, What are you modeling for them in being voters, in being diligent at understanding what's being said in the media, understanding the political arena, understanding the information that they are being told, and how they could make a change in the world eventually.
Yeah. So important. It's hard. No pressure. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
it's a hard thing. But yeah, no, but I love how you model for your children and for the rest of us is amazing. So my last question is just, how did you celebrate Mother's Day this year?
Well, I had 2 of my 3 daughters and my mom. And
Nice.
so I did going to my exercise theme, I did a class with my youngest and my middle daughter. And then we came home to mimosas with my mom and had dinner.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you. And again, just thank you for being the leader that you are and for showing up and continuing to always try and put others first in the work that you do and your commitment to public service. We just really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today to share your insights.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me. And this is delightful, not having to be the one with all the pressure of asking the question. So thanks, Larissa.
You make it easy, Jen. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, for taking the time to share these valuable insights with our audience. We are so grateful for your support of WPLN. WPLN is a national nonprofit working to educate, organize, and inspire center-right women to seek public office at every level across the U.S. and be effective leaders. We're excited for our 4th annual National Summit next week, June 5th through 7th in Orlando, Florida. If you're interested in more information on tickets or sponsoring, please contact our team at hello@womenspublicleadership.net. Thank you for joining us this month for Tips from the Trail. Be sure to rate this show, and for future episodes, find us on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. Happy trails!